video, we're going to show you instructions on how to do block 3.
We're ready to do block 3 in our Sewn Seeds quilt. Here's a look at the block. The fabrics you will need will be, of course, your battleizer. We have this hooped up and ready to go. If you're doing the optional wool, you'll need your prepared wool ready to go. You'll need a square of fabric 3, a rectangle of fabric 7, a square of fabric 2, and a strip of fabric 6. You'll need thread A, thread B with a bobbin, thread C with a bobbin, thread D, thread E with a bobbin, thread F with a bobbin, thread G with a bobbin. You will also need your Vanish Light thread. Let's get started.
Okay, we just completed step 1 where we have a battleizer in the hoop and we've stitched a placement stitch, and we have neutral thread in the needle and embroidery bobbin thread in the bobbin, and stitch a placement stitch onto the battleizer. Step 2 is an optional step, and if you don't want to do this you can skip to step 3, but we like to add the additional wool batting, so we're going to show you how to do that. And what we have done is we have pressed the edges of our wool batting so that it lays nice and flat, and then we're going to go ahead and place it here right inside that placement stitch, and we're going to have water soluble thread in the needle and regular embroidery bobbin thread in the bobbin, and we're going to go ahead and stitch a zigzag stitch around the outside. I just kind of hold it in place here. I haven't had any shift on me yet, but I'm just in case, it wouldn't hurt. This will keep your embroidery foot from getting caught in the thick high loft wool batting. And there we are. We have our wool batting zigzag to our battleizer, and that'll give us a much more quilt with much more definition, and you'll really like the appearance when it's finished.
For step 3, we will place fabric 3, centering it over your wool batting, and we'll put wash away thread in the needle, and the machine will stitch the tack down. We will trim the fabric from step 3, leaving about scant 1/4 inch. And now we're ready for step 4. For step 4, we will take our rectangle of fabric 7, place it over this center area on an angle, and the machine will stitch the tack down. To trim step 4, we will leave a scant 1/4 inch in this area right here. This area up here is an applique, so we need to trim nice and tight because that raw edge will be covered with a satin. So we're ready for step 5. For step 5, we'll take our square of fabric 2, we will place it in the corner, leave just enough hanging over, about a 1/2 inch for your seam allowance, and the machine will tack down this area here. we're going to use the leftover scraps to do the daisies in a later step. Step 5 is all stitched. We're ready to trim. This area is going to get about a scant 1/4 inch. Now we're ready to do thread G for step 6, so we'll put that in the needle only, and it'll stitch some decorative stitches in this area here. Just completed step 6 with our nice satin stitch and our decorative stitch. Now for step 7, we're going to place wash away thread back in the needle, and it'll stitch placement areas for the 3 daisies on this block. So I've stitched out with my water-soluble thread my 3 placement areas for the daisies. This happens to be the scrap from step number 5, and there's plenty of fabric here to go ahead and do these 3 daisies. We just have to lay it on, make sure we leave enough room to trim it and for seam allowance. So this one will be plenty big enough for this daisy here. And this one here. That should work right there, which leaves this piece, which will do the center. So we'll place those on there, we'll put them under the machine, we'll continue with the water-soluble thread, and the machine will tack down those pieces of fabric. So for trimming the fabric from step 8, we need to go very, very close because this is an applique. So we'll use the mini hoop scissors and get really close around the edges of the petals of the daisies. Again, I'm leaving my hoop very flat on the table. I'm not trying to pick it up because it will distort what's in your hoop if you do that. So leave it flat. This area here, we can do a scant 1/4 inch. So there we are, all trimmed up and ready for step number 9. For step number 9, we will place thread D in the needle only, and it'll do the satin stitch around the daisies, all 3 daisies. It'll do some decorative stitching in this area here, and it'll start the flower up in this corner right here. Step 10, place thread A in the needle only, and it will continue stitching the flower. Step 11, place thread G in the needle only, and the machine will stitch some more detail on the flower. Step 12, place thread E in the needle only, and it'll do more detail on the flower, plus it'll put the centers of the daisies in. Step 13, we need to place the fabric in this open area, so we will place fabric 6 over the top, put wash away thread in the needle only, and the machine will stitch the tack down. So I'm going to go ahead and trim step 13 nice and close. It's an applique, so we have to get nice and tight using my mini hoop scissors. Keeping my block nice and flat on the table. So there we are, all trimmed up. It's now ready for step 14, which is to put the back on. So I'm going to turn the hoop over and place my square of backing fabric directly over my stitching and tack the back on. We are ready for step 15, so now would be the time to turn off your automatic thread cutter on your sewing machine so you have a nice tidy back. And for step 15, we're going to place thread E in the needle and the bobbin. We're going to draw the bobbin thread up to the top, and we will quilt. The areas that we'll quilt will be around the daisies and around this flower over here. For step 16, we will place thread F in the needle and the bobbin, and we'll go ahead and finish out the satin stitching around this still raw edge area here, the quilting inside, and some detail in this area. For step 17, we're going to place thread G in the needle and the bobbin, and it will do the beautiful quilting by Sharon Schamber in these 2 areas right here. Step 19, it's time to put thread C in the needle and the bobbin, and the machine will stitch the quilting in this area right here. For step 20, we're going to complete the quilting in this lower corner. We'll need thread B in the needle and the bobbin. So we are ready to go ahead and trim block 3, which is still in the middle of the premier quilt of Sewn Seeds. So we're going to trim all 4 edges using the trimmer by George. So we pull back the front layer, take the trimmer, and snug it up to the basting line. Rotary cut off the backing and the battleizer, and we'll do that on all 4 sides. And once that's done, that's what the back looks like with no battleizer or backing on it. And the front we're going to trim to 1/4 inch past the basting line. So we turn our trimmer over and we place that last basting line on the 1/4 inch and trim off any excess fabric. So there you go. Our block's all trimmed up and ready to go.